Welcome to Gemara for Children. I'd like to begin by learning 7 new words from our Gemara. Word number 1, Heichi Dami, what is the case? Word number 2, Derech, way or path. Word number 3, Nefila, fallen. Word number 4, Afilu, even. Word number 5, Tuva, more. Word number 6, Nami, also. Final word number 7, if. We've learned in our Gemara that the definition of the first case of the Reisha in our Mishnah, that if a person finds scattered produce, Rabbi Yitzchak taught us that specifically means if they find 1 kav of produce, 6 cups of produce in an area that's 4 by 4 amos. Asks the Gemara, Heichi Dami, what is the case? What does it matter if a person finds scattered produce? Why didn't the Mishnah just teach us if a person finds lost produce, then they're allowed to keep it? Why did it say scattered produce? For example, if a person were to find 2 kav of produce, double the amount of produce, in the same area of 4 by 4 amos, if from the way the produce is lying on the ground, you can tell that it fell from the owner lost it. So even though technically it's no longer considered scattered, because you have a lot more produce in the same amount of space, still the finder should be allowed to keep it because the owner lost it. And the same applies in the reverse. Let's say someone finds a half a kav of produce. They find 3 cups of produce in the same area of 4 by 4 amos. So even though this is still considered to be scattered, you have a lot less produce in the same area. But if the way the produce is lying on the ground, you can see that the owner left it there. It didn't fall from him. The owner left it there, which means he plans on coming back and retrieving it. Then even though now it's considered scattered, why should the finder be allowed to keep it? So again, the question is, why did the Mishnah say in case number 1 that a person finds scattered produce, they're allowed to keep it? All that matters, the Mishnah should have said if a person finds lost produce, even if it's not scattered. So therefore answers the Gemara, Rav Ukva Bar Chama says that from the fact that our Mishnah said scattered produce and not lost produce, it must mean that we're speaking about a case where an owner left behind produce on their threshing floor. When people used to plant and harvest grain, after harvesting them, what they would do is something called threshing. Kernels of grain grow inside of husks. So in order to separate the kernels from the husks, first the owner needs to crush the husks and crack it open. Then they would take these husks and throw it in the air. This process is called winnowing. The wind would come and blow away the husks, which are lighter, and the kernels would fall back onto the ground, onto the threshing floor. So says Rav Ukva Bar Chama that the first case of our Mishnah is speaking about not where an owner lost his produce, but rather where an owner left behind his grain in his threshing floor. And if the owner left behind 1 kav of grain, 6 cups of grain, in an area that's 4 by 4 amos, being that it were to require a lot of effort for the owner to come back and find and retrieve that grain, we can assume the owner is going to leave it there and make it hefker and make it ownerless. And therefore, if someone finds it, they are allowed to take it. But if, let's say, an owner were to leave 1 kav of produce in an area that's 3 by 3 amos in a smaller space, and now it's no longer considered scattered, we will assume that the owner will come back and retrieve it, since it won't require that much effort for him to come and take it. So in conclusion, now if we were to summarize the first case of the Mishnah, the case is referring to where an owner leaves behind 1 kav of grain in an area in his threshing floor that's 4 by 4 amos. Being that it's too much effort for the owner to retrieve it, we can assume the owner made it hefker, and therefore if someone finds it, then they are allowed to keep it.